Hello and welcome back to the History of English on the Taiwan Language Channel. I decided to switch to my old smartphone because the camera is actually much better than the webcam I was using for episode 1. So for this episode 2, I'll be using this and my lav mic, which seems to be working pretty well. And as promised, what we're going to be going over today are the 3 periods historically that we can classify English in, which are the period of Old English, Middle English, and Modern English. So this is a little disclaimer before I go any further. I'm not a historian, and if I say we, or if I say people, I just mean the community of people who study the history of English in general, and maybe other linguists. I'm not lumping myself in with them because I'm not a professional linguist, but I'm just somebody who's extremely interested. So, the first language, of course, on the docket is the beginning, which is Old English. If you remember back to the previous video, I said there was that region in Northern Europe called the Anglos and the Saxons lived there. There was a place called Anglia and Saxon country, you could call it, and they had very similar dialects at that time. And around the 5th century, they started migrating to Britain, and at that time, in the 5th century, their languages had merged into one unified language called Anglo-Saxon, Anglo-Saxon, and that is the same as Old English. So you might be wondering, what does Old English sound like? Is it similar? And you're about to see an excerpt on your screen in just a moment from a story called Beowulf, author unknown. You will notice that there are very different spelling things going on and actually different letters.
What way gardena in yer dagum Theod sininga thrim jefrunon Huda ethelingas elin fremedon. The translation: Lo, praise of the prowess of people kings, of spear-armed Danes, in days long sped. We have heard, and what honor the ethelings won. As you can see here, there are some major differences between the original Old English spelling and pronunciation and vocab. It's completely different, right?
This Old English script looks very different than modern English script. Not only are there some strange spelling things going on, but actually some of the letters don't even exist in the modern English alphabet. It is generally agreed that the period called Old English ended around 1066 with the Norman conquest of Britain. And why is that? Well, it's because the Normans and French started to influence English a lot. So did Latin, so did other languages. We just see a lot of changes happening at this period of time. It is debatable when Middle English really became Middle English. It was probably, even in 1066, you saw remnants of Old English. People were still speaking like the Old English style. And there were many dialects of Old English, by the way, too. So what you'll normally see, including the work from Beowulf, is a West Saxon variety of Old English. But basically around 1066, we go into the period of Middle English. And deep into that period of Middle English, there are many more works that we can see. And there are pronunciation changes and differences in spelling than there were from Old English, and a lot more simplification. When it's written, it starts to look a lot like an old form of modern English. You can kind of make that jump a lot easier. So you're about to see on your screen the work from Chaucer, from his story, The Canterbury Tales. Believe it's a long poem, and this is from the prologue of The Canterbury Tales. So without further ado, here it is.
One that April, with his shores suit, the dracht of March hath perced to the root, and bathed every vein in sweet liquor. The modern translation for this is, when April, with its sweet-smelling showers, has pierced the drought of March to the root, and bathed every vein, referring to the plants, in such liquid. Here you can see a much clearer transition to modern English. In fact, it really just looks like an older version of English, as opposed to Old English compared to modern English, which look like two completely different languages.
There you have it, the Canterbury Tales. I did my best to pronounce both of these excerpts, but you can always Google either of them online and find other people reading them. So let's see, the next thing that you're going to see is just a side-by-side 3-column comparison of Old, Middle, and Modern English. And I should make one note before you see that, which is take note of the spelling in Modern English in some of the words, because you'll see slight differences. Even though it's Modern English, it doesn't look like the English of today exactly, not 100%. So that was a comparison of Old, Middle, and Modern English using the Lord's Prayer. One of the reasons why religious texts are so useful, especially Christianity, is because it's been around for so long. So it covers a lot of different versions of English, obviously all of them. One of the things that you may have noticed in the modern English, early modern English example of the Lord's Prayer that you just saw was the use of thee and thy, which are older forms of the current modern day pronoun you, Y-O-U. You also might notice that this is something that you see in Shakespeare's works and plays. And that is because Shakespeare was around when modern day English was in its infancy. It was truly early modern English. So that's the period when Middle English was transforming to become modern English. And that happened around the late 15th century, so that would have been the late 1400s. Also, Chaucer was around the late 1300s, just about 100 years before. So one of the things that made Middle English transition to modern English was a great event that happened called the Great Vowel Shift, which I'll make sure to talk about in future episodes. So there you have it, just a little background of the 3 major periods of English for you. I haven't chosen a topic for my next video, but I believe I'm going to make it about strange English spelling and pronunciation, maybe talk about digraphs or talk about some strange letter that is very different in different contexts in English. So until next time, farewell.